All right. A wonderful afternoon, my dear students. I wish you a wonderful new year ahead. And yes, let's begin with the syllabus guideline before we move on to today's session. So, you remember we have already spoken about um, the evolution process of a business. We spoke about evolution of money. So today we're going to talk about the trade or the auxiliary services. All right. Okay, so make sure that you are sticking with the particular syllabus. So your learning objectives, what they expect from you is you should be able to explain the difference between commerce and trade. All right, and then explain remaining auxiliary services for the business. So this is the area that we're going to look into today. So let's jump into today's chapter. Let me share the screen. All right, so I hope the screen is clear enough. So we stopped at the difference between trade and auxiliary services. So the diagram itself clearly explains us commerce is a combination of trade and the auxiliary services. So what is trade? Well, trade is an activity that involves in buying and selling something, buying and selling. Let's take a very simple example. You walk on the road, you feel thirsty, you go to a retail shop, you buy a beverage, you quench your thirst, while you pay him in return. So that's a trade. But selling, buying and selling is involved. Buying and selling. You buy, the person is selling to you. All right. So this is happening within one particular region or one particular country. So that's called the local trade. So obviously, when it comes to foreign trade or international trade, we understand that trading process is happening out of a country, out of a country. For an example, so Dumbro is one of the South Asia's largest furniture producer. So being such an organization, they are trading or they involved in international trade because they do sell furnitures out of the country. So they are involved in buying and selling, but not within Sri Lanka, beyond Sri Lanka as well. So that's trade. We understand what is trade. We'll be looking into it in detail with clear notes as well. Just for a moment, try to visualize, okay, this is trade. Simply think or recall some of your personal experiences. All right. So let's get into today's theory. Trade. Trade is the voluntary exchange of goods or services between different economic actors. Why do we use the term different economic actors? See, all of us are playing different roles in an economy. Yes, it could be individual, it could be an organization, it could be a society, it could be a district, it could be a province, it could be a country, it could be a group of countries. See, everyone plays different roles. So that's why we call them as economic actors. Since transactions are consensual, trade is generally considered to benefit both parties. Trade is generally considered to benefit both the parties. So, who are the parties involved in trade? The person who sells, we technically tell them sales person or salesman, and the person who purchases it. Most of the time, we use the term consumer or we use the term customer. So, make sure there are two different concepts. When you say consumer, the person has to consume. Final beneficiary should be the person who purchases it. For an example, you go to a hotel, you order a meal, you eat it. You are the one consuming it. So you become a consumer. All right. Let's say it's your birthday. You take a bunch of friends. You order meals for them as well, and you pay for them. So here you are the customer to that particular hotel. Those people or the friends of yours are consumers. I hope you understand the difference between consumer and customer. In finance, trading refers to purchasing and selling securities or other assets. So trading can happen in two ways. One, you sell goods. We have learned what is good, and we have spoken about services as well. So financial trading is a service-oriented trading activity. In international trade, the comparative advantage theory states that trade benefits all parties. So why do you think we have to involve in international trade? Well, as an economy, you would have learned in economics as well. As an economy, see, Sri Lanka is one of the best examples. We do face an economical crisis. Yes. So many of you know why, the reason behind it. Excuse me. Excuse me. All right, let me just share the screen again. Here we go. So, talking about the economic crisis. So, all of you are aware of Sri Lanka's present situation. We are lacking of foreign cash inflow or forex, foreign exchange. We don't have enough foreign currency reserves. So that's the reason we are finding this much of difficulties. Why? Because we are one of the nations which is relied much on imports. So we need to import a lot of goods, a lot of services. So if we are relying more on imports, imagine how would we pay them? So we have to pay them, right? So we have to pay them. So in order to pay them, we have to use one of the internationally recognized form of money. So as you all know, dollar, United States dollar or US dollar, American dollars are the ones which are internationally recognized as a transferable instrument. So we are lacking of it. We don't have enough reserve for us to make enough payments. So that's one main reason why we are facing this much of struggle. So we understand international trade, in order to gain or in order to reserve, in order to have dollars, we have to engage in international trade. We have to export more. So if countries are purchasing our products, imagine tourists coming into a country. Tourists bring dollars, they exchange Sri Lankan rupees and they spend it all over the country. So those dollars are reserved here. Dambro sells furnitures to India. India pays us in dollars. We reserve dollars, or the company gives those dollars to the banks and convert into Sri Lankan rupees. Now we understand the benefits that's engaged in international trade. All right. Talking about trade, trade is divided into two. One is local, the other one is foreign trade. Let's talk what is local. Domestic trade or the local trade happens when the business is conducted inside of a country's border. Now, Sri Lanka doesn't have such issues because Sri Lanka is an island. Just imagine India, imagine China. So these countries have particular borders. So if something is happening beyond the border, that's international trade. So that's a clear definition. So that's how you define what domestic trade or the local trade means. It means the exchange of goods and services are only made within the geographical boundaries of the country. The seller and the buyer of the goods are from the same country as well. So this can happen either way. Probably now say tourists visit our country, so they go to a local outlet, they buy. Well, that's considered as local trade as well, right? But in means of them bringing foreign currencies and spending over here, well, that's a different currency. So there we are going to use the term international trade. But in macroeconomics, I believe you know what is macroeconomics. You would have learned in economics. Well, microeconomics is talking about individual units, such as individual person, families, a company, an organization, an industry, micro level economics. Macroeconomics is talking in a grand scale, talking collectively about organizations, about societies, about country. So that's macroeconomics. Trade usually refers to international trade, or we call them foreign trade, the system of exports and imports that connects the global economy. A product sold to global market is an export, and a product brought or bought from the global market is an import. A very simple example, Sri Lanka exports tea to Ukraine, to Russia. Sri Lanka imports vehicles from Japan, right? You understand the difference between export and import. International trade results in increased efficiency and allows countries to benefit from foreign direct investment. So this particular term, FDI, would have learned or would have heard plenty of time when when the protests were going on, when the economic crises were in peak. So this foreign direct investment, you would have heard a lot of this particular phrase. A business in other countries. What is foreign direct investment? Well, when you are engaged in international trade, there is a possibility of foreign investors investing into our country. That's foreign direct investment. A very simple example, Leyland is an Indian vehicle producer. They have invested in Sri Lanka and they are assembling vehicles or buses in Sri Lanka. So they invest their money here and they work on. Port City is a very good example. Colombo Port City. You see many of the Chinese investors have directly invested. When you go to certain industrial parks like Pallekele, Katunayake, where you see many organizations or many factories, many companies exist by foreign direct investment. All right. So you understand what is FDI. So please make sure you get used to these kind of terms: exports, imports, international trade, foreign direct investment. These are the areas when you speak about trade which are more spoken or which can be more tested. You should have enough knowledge of these terms. All right. Foreign direct investment can bring foreign currencies and expertise into a country, raising local employment and skills level. So Sri Lanka, in order to overcome this particular struggle, the economic crisis, we have to encourage more and more of foreign direct investment. For investors, foreign direct investment offers company expansion and growth, eventually leading to higher revenues. A trade deficit is a situation where a country spends more on aggregate imports from abroad than it earns from its aggregate exports. Aggregate means total, total imports, total exports. Trade deficit. So talking about Sri Lanka, Sri Lanka is actually having or facing a trade deficit. How? Because our imports are actually high or more than what we export. So that's the reason we are having a trade deficit. Or in other terms, we are losing more of our foreign reserves or foreign currencies to pay for the imports. So we don't earn much as we import or we spend. That's the trade deficit. So trade surpluses, where certain countries will have trade surpluses. The best example, China has trade surplus because they export more and they import less. USA is also one of those countries. So you see some of the world popular economies, they have trade surpluses because they exports more, imports less. A trade deficit represents an outflow of domestic currency to foreign markets. So our money is going out. This may also be referred to as a negative balance of trade. So what is balance of trade? Balance of trade is the difference between exports and imports, balance of trade. So if it is a negative balance of trade, that is a trade deficit. If it is a positive balance of trade, that's a trade surplus. Hope it's clear. Right. Let's talk about some of the advantages or benefits of trade. It increases nations' global standing. Yes. So Sri Lanka, one of the best tea producers among the world. We stand in the fourth position in terms of exporting tea. Last year, we have exported more than 300 metric ton of tea. So see, we have a global standing in terms of tea producing. So that's one advantage. It raises the nation's profitability, undoubtedly, creates more job opportunities, expands product varieties, encourages investments in a country globally. So these are some of the advantages, right? So you can work on for yourself, try to list down and do an analysis of finding some of the advantages and disadvantages involved in international trade as well as. See, when you speak about international trade, there are certain advantages, and in the meantime, there are disadvantages as well. See, as we are relying more on imports, we are facing an economic crisis. So, a country exporting to our country will have a raise in their profit, but we, as an importing country, we are suffering. So, you understand? So, you can write the advantages and disadvantages in different perspectives, an exporting country, an importing country. I hope you understand. All right. So that's about trade. That's about trade. So trade is divided into two. One is local and international. And under international, you have something called imports and exports. Retail and wholesale can happen under imports and exports as well. All right. So let's talk about retail and wholesale as well. Retail offers or refers to the sale of services or goods in a way that the end user directly receives them. An example of retail business is a department store. So the end user directly should receive it. You go to supermarket, you buy products for your household purpose, then you are engaged in retail. You go to a sweet store, a sweet selling stall, you talk to them and you buy a bulk quantity of sweets or confectionaries with the intention to resell at the college fair or the commerce day. You have organized a fair in your school or in your college, so you wanted to sell those sweets. So here you are engaged in wholesale. So what is wholesale? Wholesale or wholesalers are companies or individuals that sell goods or services to other businesses or other individuals rather than the end user. For example, a company that sells fruit and vegetables to different grocery stores in the area is a wholesaler. So the intention is very clear. It's not directly to the end user, it is with the intention of reselling to an end user. So you understand the difference. So please make sure you take down on this and list down some of the examples. So what is retail and what is wholesale? So I have given you some of the differences between wholesale and retail. So in terms of buyers, business customers, or some of the retailers are examples. Here, final customer should be the end user. Buying motive of buyers for reselling purpose or trading, here for the purpose of personal use, right? Personal use. Business volume is high, retailers are very low. Business volume means the amount of quantities or the size of the business. Risk involved, yes, obviously the risk is high in wholesale because you're selling a bulk quantity. Here, you don't sell that much quantity. So the risk is very low when compared to the wholesale. Investment requirement is high. You need more money to be invested when you are engaged in a wholesale business. But here it is not. Promotional activities, well, you don't have to do much. Promotions by businesses, when they wanted to buy things, they will come searching for you. But if you're a retailer, well, you will have to do more of promotions. You have to market yourself in order to attract more customers. Store atmosphere, layout, and location, less attention. You don't, when you go to a wholesale shop, probably you might not see well organized, properly maintained, that kind of. I'm not saying that there are no businesses which do such way, but majority of the businesses do not have a proper kind of outlay. But here, as a retailer, it's really important to ensure to maintain a proper, a professional way of handling things. So you have to give enough attention. Area covered, a large area is covered. Many areas, territories can be handled by a single wholesaler. Relatively small, mostly retailers operate in small area. Upper link, producer, wholesaler, or producer in case of large retailers. All right. So retailer, to whom does a retailer sell? To whom does a wholesaler sell? That's the difference between retailing and wholesale. All right. Next, we're going to talk about the meaning of business auxiliary services. So for the time being, you should have understood. By the time you should have understood, commerce is a combination of two different things. One is trade, the other one is called auxiliary services. This together becomes commerce. This together becomes commerce. So today I'm going to give you a brief explanation of this, and we will be talking in detail on our next session. What is the meaning of business auxiliary services or supporting services? Auxiliaries or supporting services to trade refers to the factors that are essential for bringing the goods from the place of their production to the place of their consumption. In simple words, these are essential services and functions that assist the business. Let's take a good example. Let's say you are one of the vehicle sellers. So it's obvious we don't have much vehicle production in our country. So you have to find a person or a company that sells vehicles. It's obvious, let's say Japan. So you found one of the dealers who sells vehicles from Japan. So you are getting connected maybe through email correspondence, or you send him uh, a letter in writing. Somehow you get connected, or use your smartphone or use your mobile phone. Somehow you are getting connected with that particular person. In order to do that, you need communication. You need communication. So communication is one of the auxiliary services. Let's say now you have connected, or you have identified your potential exporter from Japan. You are the importer. So now you are proceeding with the documentations and everything is happening. Now the person has to send you the vehicles. So how? Maybe by ship, or maybe by the aeroplane, cargo aeroplanes. So transportation is involved. So does it make sense? In order to support you selling business or you selling vehicles, you need the support of these kinds of auxiliary services. So now you understand what is auxiliary service. So there are plenty of auxiliary services which we'll be looking into our next session. All right. So I believe it was a good and a productive session. So please make sure you request all of your friends who are finding financial difficulties to go and learn from an institute or from an individual teacher to use this platform, because after we complete a certain area, we will be looking into at least 2 or 3 past papers on those areas, or what kind of questions are being tested and how can we answer smartly. These are the areas we'll be looking into. All right. Thank you very much for supporting and encouraging me. So please stay along and ensure that you make use of this platform. Thank you very much. Have a good one and enjoy the new year.